Hi there. In this video I'm going to be using a overlay layer with a black and white brush just to add some dimensions to this really rough human head. I just kind of threw the shape together with the pen tool, and I'm now going to just apply basically shadow. For anyone who's familiar with makeup, basically what I'm doing is contouring using just black and white. You can use other colors if you want to, if you wanted to add a certain cast to your shadows, but really all I'm doing is just kind of practicing getting the shapes right, doing the highlights. I do have a bit of an advantage in my previous life as a photographer. I was very much a photographer of people, so I'm kind of very familiar with bone structure and shapes. So actually mapping the main landscapes or the landmarks of the face like I'm doing at the moment is relatively simple, and then it's just a case of tweaking to get the shapes right. So as you can see at the moment, I'm just adding some highlights and shadows to kind of block out those details. And I'm not going to go super detailed with this. I'm just getting into the habit of adding the value where I need to add it. So once I've added most of the landmarks and some of the key highlights and shadows, I can then start refining by using smaller pressure. To be honest, I probably could have done with actually changing the pressure settings of my pen for this, so that at no point am I adding 100% opacity, purely because at no point am I going to want that level of value to be added in either shadow or highlights. I don't want any completely white or completely black spots in the image. Just like in photography, really, you don't want any blown out highlights or dropped out shadows. You want everything to be within a certain range, really. The beauty of using this method of adding value to a image is that you can just take off whatever you put on. You don't even need the extensive history that Photoshop allows you to have. You can just, if you paint something too much white, just paint a little bit of black over it. Just keep nudging it backwards and forwards until you get to the value that you want. If you want small detail, you can just use a very fine brush, and if you want to just add a large amount of highlight to a particular area, perhaps down the middle of the face for example, you can just make the brush really big. And depending on when your light source is going to very much affect where your highlights and shadows are. But a general rule when I'm practicing this method, and again I am only a beginner myself, so I may change my mind on this in the future, but essentially, oh, a little bit of a misclick there, so just bring that back, center it again. Basically, the further out something sticks, the more light it's going to catch. So the nose is obviously going to be the brightest part of the image, followed by the cheekbones and the brow, and maybe the chin. So you're almost generating a height map for the face. So I think I've got some of the smaller details are now starting to appear, so I'm going to start sort of trying to balance things out and get them looking a little bit more even, and then bringing in some slightly more fine detail. Not a lot though. I'm not going to bring in loads of fine detail. I'm just going to make perhaps some of the nose features stand out a little bit more and add lots of shape as much as I can. What I will do once I've reached that point is I'm going to use the smudge tool as well to soften up some of these transitions between light and dark. I think on the left hand side of the face there's a little bit too much of a harsh transition between the highlight of the cheekbone and the shadow of the cheek. So I'm going to definitely smooth that out, and some of the transition up here on the brow is a little bit too sharp, so I'll probably smooth that out a little bit as well. Again, it's just such a simple and fun technique to just keep adding and taking away value to make those shapes stand out. I mean, you could already kind of get the feeling that this is a person with their eyes closed, perhaps underneath a shroud of some sort. Just tidying up some of those nose details to make the nose look a little bit more realistic. Adding some of that detail to the tip of the nose. And this is I find this very cathartic. I've only done this practice a few times, but I'm finding, and I apologize for the moments where I go quiet, is because I'm sort of concentrating, I'm getting immersed in what I'm doing and just enjoying it. This is such a simple technique, but it gets such a great output, you know. I mean, you know, this is a really effective way of mastering how to contour a face once you've drawn in the fine detail. So here I'm going to grab the smudge tool and just soften up some of those transitions that I've made maybe a little bit too harsh, or where I've perhaps been adding and taking away value too much and it's made it look blotchy. I'm just going to smooth those out. Working on the brow as well, just smoothing out those transitions, make it look nice and smooth. I mean, this is a human head, so it should be relatively smooth in the large areas. The only place where there's any major transitions are directly around the eyes, nose and mouth. Everything else is quite smooth. The cool thing about this technique as well is that it doesn't just have to be human face that you can use it on. You can use it for pretty much anything. I can perhaps have a bit of a play once I've reached a stage where I'm happy with the human face. We could add some funky shapes to make it look a little bit more alien-like, perhaps. So I'm just adding some highlights to the inside of the eye / the outside of the nose, and I'm going to add some shadow to the under of the eyes, just to mimic those dark circles that most people get, and then a little bit under the eyebrow ridge. And then I can again bring the smudge tool in and soften those transitions up a little bit, just to make them look a little bit more natural. Just take some of that value away with the white brush. Every pass that you make, where you make the brush a little bit smaller, you just add a little bit more fidelity to the overall shapes that you're creating. When you make a mistake, either take it away or blend it out using a smudge brush. And the beauty is if I just turn off this layer, everything goes away and I can start again. So let's just add a little bit of more definition to the jawbone there, just make that pop a little bit. And then maybe soften out the brows a little bit. And I can just have a little bit of fun then and add some more weird and wonderful shapes to make it look completely bizarre. And the key to doing anything like this is just to make the transitions as smooth as possible, not make them look like they're too sharp. If you drape skin over things, generally speaking, it's going to have a smooth appearance. So I can add some extra forehead ridges here. As long as I make them look smooth, I can make them look quite natural. Just take some of that value back out if I feel like I've gone too far when I'm adding the shadows. And then perhaps add one down the middle, give it like a Klingon set of Klingon head fins or whatever they're called, head ridges. This one's going to be a bit sharper. So I probably need to make the central highlight a little bit brighter. And then if I feel like I've got too much in there, I can always pull it back when I add the shadow afterwards. Probably a little bit too much there. That's quite bright. It's almost white, so I'll just take some of that back off. Keep it looking fairly kind of natural. And then I'm going to add maybe some ridge plates, which I can do just using again more shadow. And then once I've mapped in the shadows, I can add a little bit more fine detail in there and see how it looks. If I were doing this for an actual character design, I would probably ease back on those a little bit, but I'm just going to add some shadow to them to soften them up a little bit. It doesn't look great, but it doesn't look terrible either. I think I would just say I would ease back on that a little bit in a proper project, but this is just practice and having fun. So hopefully you found watching this informative or entertaining, or perhaps even a little bit relaxing. Hopefully you've gained something from it. Let me know in the comments, and I will do my best to respond to them. But hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll speak to you again soon. But until then, take care of yourselves. Bye bye.